There's one type of candidate archetype that is on the market at the moment that I get to see quite a lot. And that type is the person that's a little bit down on their luck, has a fair few jobs on their CV that over a period of time would make them look like job hoppers. And the problem with it is the generalistic information out there for job hoppers is really negative or really kind of perspective of people which have job hopped found themselves in a situation that is in the negative part. So they're basically claiming that being a job hopper isn't a bad thing and it brings a lot of skill sets to the table. And I don't argue with everything those articles say. The reality is, it is not what the job hopper produces, it is what the view or the perspective of the job hopper is the problem. Hiring managers are not looking for people with multiple jobs because the perspective from their part is that you've been in quite a few jobs. If I hire you, am I going to be looking for someone else in 6 months' time? The questions arise around job hoppers, which come from the perspective, especially in the sales world, is, are you good at doing the job? Can you actually make sales? Can you hit the targets that are given in a short period of time, which some sales jobs do? Or if you're in a technical role where it requires you to make something, is your skills at the right level to that particular role? Hoppers have a lot of questions. And as much as it pains me to say that your skills are in question and your integrity is in question at the same time, that brings you a lot of problems to the table. I feel there's not enough advice on the market at the moment for job hoppers. Or for that type of archetype where people are down in their luck. Because the other part of it as well, from experience, a lot of people which are in that situation, they've had a few jobs over a period of time, are in it because of bad luck. And we've had 5 very turbulent years of an economy going up and down, and we're now in that kind of weird place at the moment, 2024, June 2024, if you're watching this later on. The economy increases and things are more stable, then people with multiple jobs on a CV do find themselves in a better position later on because they're able to find a job. But the question is, and the paradox is to this, is it the right job? Is it going to bring stability to that CV? So I've got a few suggestions to you moving forward in finding that right job. My first suggestion is we need to really look at the problem. What has been the last few jobs? Let's go back 2 years or maybe even 4 years, because a lot of hiring managers will look at your CV going back quite some time. Some up to 10 years, some up to 5-6 years, depending on your age and your experience you bring to the table. That experience that you've had for the last few jobs, what has been the common theme? And there's a point of which then you can now realize. This is the bit where you look at yourself and think, right, the common theme has been this, or the common theme has been that. Have you learned from those problems? So you need to sit back a little bit. Now, look, sometimes the vast majority of it is, I've been made redundant because of X, Y, and Z. And that's great. To the point, I don't mean that as great you've been made redundant, by the way, but that's great that you realise that you've pointed out that this is the problem, I've been made redundant. So the good thing about this is that now you can start identifying companies that are maybe going to struggle into the future, or the type of companies. Because if you look at the last 4 or 5 companies you've been made redundant from, there will be a common theme of each of these companies, whether they are small or medium or in the wrong sector or financially not viable, things you can find out yourself and look at the last 10 years of that particular company. Companies that make lots of redundancies regularly make redundancies over the years that they've been in business. So you can find in the media very quickly the company you're applying for a job with if it makes redundancies quite a lot. The question you need to ask yourself again, though, why are you being made redundant? Is it last in, first out? Or is your role a type of role that companies will be nice to have? So it's nice to have this type of person in the business, but when the chips are down and the market's hitting the ground, then we don't need this particular person. So they get rid of that particular person, or that particular role, I should say, not person. We don't need this particular role, so they get rid of that role. And that's a problem for you, because that means now you are now in a kind of career that is disposable to vast majority of companies. Which brings me on to point number 2. Sometimes I find with candidates that find themselves in positions, the position that they're going into is either one they are very weak skilled in, and that's why they're being moved on very quickly from each job. And I don't mean that in a nasty way. I mean that in a way that you've got to realise that you might not be good at the role that you do. So if it's sales, you might not be a salesperson, but you love the money. But sadly, you know this. I don't need to tell you this. I don't need to dictate to you this. The other one is that the skill sets are not needed anymore because things are being replaced in the marketplace. You know, going back to kind of the Luddites and how the looms in the 17th century were being replaced. Sorry, people that loomed were being replaced by automated looms. Skill sets were dying off because of automation, and it's the same thing with this fourth industrial revolution that we're going at the moment. AI, automation. What that means for you in that situation is this something you could do with your current skill set? Could you learn more stuff? Could you add more to it? Could you get yourself on a course? It'll have to be in your own time, but that's endearing as well. Companies like to see endearing things that people do, advancing their skills to future-proof themselves into a job. And that might be another problem that you have at the same time. Your skill set's not being seen as viable at the moment, hence why, again, you're a nice thing to have in the business, or your skills are a nice thing to have in the business, and that's why you're being moved on when times are hard. The third one here is depending on where you are in the level and hierarchy of things in a business, and if your role is sought after, but you're finding yourself in positions where you're being moved on, or you're hitting a brick wall within that particular role, the same job, different wallpaper kind of scenario, and you've got to look back and think, right, where am I going wrong in this? Why am I hitting a wall in every one of these jobs? I'm doing the same thing. I've got lots of skill sets. Now, I'll use an example for this. Is recruitment is a very good one for this. Recruitment consultants that move from job to job finding themselves in very similar situations and not quite hitting the same level of sales, they're not quite doing the same thing. And maybe the role within recruitment is not the right role for them. So they may be looking at some other type of role might fit their skill set. So maybe you're brilliant at business development or you're brilliant at resourcing. What you need to consider then is your next role to look at either stepping down into a resourcing role, or stepping sideways into a business development role, or stepping sideways into more of an account management, talent, internal team role. But again, that presents all its level of different problems in different markets. Looking at an alternative version of your current role, where you can take your skills into a role that seems to be a little less pressure off you, and a little bit more future for you, which you could then regrow back into that role that you want to go into, or maybe go in a different direction completely. The problem I find with a lot, well, not the problem I find, the issue with what I find with what I just said there, it will require you, though, to maybe take a pay cut, which might not be a viable option for you because you've got your own financial pressures. If you're in and out of jobs, you've got financial pressures, wouldn't it be better to have something that's paying slightly less for a longer period of time to help you with your finances than be in and out of jobs for 3-4 months gaps between, which could put a lot of pressure on your finances? Consider these little things at the same time. Last one. And I'm going to take this from my own heart here. Okay, this is my learn. I had a period of time where I worked for a really big global company, did very well there, really enjoyed my role. I felt I outgrew the role at one point, so I started looking for another job. I went to move to another job and hated it. I then moved to another job and found myself in a situation where I just wasn't doing what I should be doing. So I moved to another job. And then that was basically based on a lot of other problems and lies and deceit and stuff like that. So I was job hopping and I was blaming other people for my problems of the job hopping. After a couple of years of bouncing back and forth, I had a lovely little break doing some jury work. And I was chatting to this guy in the jury service. He was a postmaster, believe it or not. And he was saying to me that the reason he became a postmaster was he just felt he wasn't employable anymore. He just felt that he couldn't look up to people. He couldn't take information from other people which were beyond him, below him, or however you want to put it. So he made the decision that maybe I need to be self-employed. I need to find myself in this world. So if you work in a sector or you work in a role that can be packaged up as a self-employed project or self-employed service or something you can present to companies, maybe that might be the best option for you. And that's what I did. I've always wanted to run my own business. And here I am 8 years later, after about a job hopping, trying to work out what the hell do I want in life. I'm now here I've created a role, I've created my own job, a stable job for 8 years, running my own business, nearly 9 years as well as I record this. In conclusion to all this, this is just a guide. Okay, I'm not telling you to do these things. I'm just giving you some ideas, some thoughts for you to kind of go off into the world and think, maybe this is me. Maybe I'm this type of archetype. Maybe I'm problematic. Maybe I need to look at myself. Maybe it's my mindset. Maybe I need to go and speak to someone and have some advice or get myself a mentor or just chat with someone about your problems. Or maybe, and this is another part of this as well, which I didn't want to mention in the top 4 ideas, maybe it's a personal issue. Maybe something's going on within yourself that's not letting you fit into teams. Maybe you need to have a realization of who you are, what you are, and is this the right career for you? And it's making you very depressed and very kind of angry and frustrated with your life, and it's not the right place to be. And that's a career change. That's something to go in a different direction with your life, and that might be something you need to do. You can only come up with these thoughts, and that's why this is called It Starts With You. Because it starts with you, and the best thing for you to do is look after yourself and be kind to yourself. I hope this video helps. Good luck.